try to run through some of the data about the funding of our schools here in Fairhope and Baldwin County, and I'll be as concise as I possibly can. Let's go on first. As you are certainly aware, we've had a tumultuous time in the state of Alabama and Baldwin County in terms of the funding of public education. Go to the next slide, Jim. And to get to the nexus of this problem, we've been looking at the last 5 years, but the nexus of the problem is right before you with the funding cuts from the state of Alabama to Baldwin County. There were cuts in appropriations for a couple of years, and then there were also prorations. That is, once the budget was published, they subsequently came in and pulled funds back from the proposed budget. The cumulative impact of that over the past 5 years has been $50 million out of a budget of about $250 million. The next slide will show that this even has been exacerbated by declines in local county revenue. As you are aware, we derive our revenue and support for the public schools from retail sales tax and ad valorem property tax. Retail sales is obviously volatile during this economic time, and as we know here with the City Council in Fairhope, property appraisals decline, that there's going to have a concomitant relationship with our revenue from ad valorem tax. That added almost a $13 million hit to a decline in support for Baldwin County schools. Cumulatively, $63 million from state and local funding were reduced in a budget of about $260 million. You know? Now, there have been two intervening events that have helped us. The first one is the American Recovery and Relief Act, the federal stimulus program. It saved a number of jobs, saved a number of teaching positions, and really helped us during this 5-year period. But as you can see there, the stimulus, federal stimulus dollars have come and gone, and they no longer impact on the needs for our educational system. A piece of good news, the second piece of good news was we passed here in Baldwin County a 3-year 1-cent sales tax, retail sales tax increase to support public education. That sales tax generates about $25 million a year. So what we were looking at there is a loss of $63 million offset by about a $25 million revenue increase because of the 3-year 1-cent sales tax increase. A net loss of $40 million. Jim? Boy, this is going to be tough to see. What I'm trying to illustrate here, this is from the most current financial report published on the Baldwin County Board of Education website. It shows revenue and expenditures for our system. And it excludes capital improvement dollars and debt service. So really what we're looking at there are the dollars that are available to the administration and the school board to, in essence, manipulate. That's a bad term, but they have some discretion about how those dollars are spent. You got to pay your mortgage, and then what's left you can use to support the education of the children in the best manner possible. Now what I want to illustrate there, if you can see down the revenue, that's tough to see there, federal revenues in Baldwin County. Out of this year, this revenue stream, our total revenues were about $262 million. $31 million of that is derived from federal sources, about 12% of our revenues. The bad news is our 5 schools in Fairhope feeder pattern do not profit or do not benefit from these federal dollars. Overwhelmingly, the largest avenue of federal support for our schools are for the Title I schools. Title I school is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. Lonnie, I remember Lyndon Johnson. You and others will not remember Lyndon Johnson. War on Poverty and Great Society. This was the hallmark piece of federal legislation for the first time, providing tremendous support for the public schools. Our problem in Fairhope is that the Title I monies are targeted to schools who have a large proportion of low-income students. You have to have 40% of your student body who are receiving reduced or free lunches in order to qualify to be a Title I school. What that means as we go through this figure is that effectively 12% of the revenue coming into Baldwin County schools doesn't get to Fairhope. We get a little bit of federal money from a couple of other programs, but the big dollars are associated with the pilot schools. The next slide is from the same report, the financial report. And what I want to illustrate with this, ladies and gentlemen, is that public schools are labor-intensive organizations. We spend our money on people, on teachers, instructional support services, our librarians, counselors, assistant principals, and so forth. Operation and maintenance of plant, like gas and water that we buy from the city of Fairhope, custodial services, and so on. If you look at the aggregate expenditure budget for Baldwin County Board of Education schools, personnel costs exceed 85% of the total expenditures that you see there. What that means, if you've got to cut $40 million out of a $250, $260 billion budget, you are going to cut teachers, assistant principals, counselors, custodians. You've got to cut personnel to achieve those savings. The other thing I want to point out in this slide real quickly is I've heard the notion that Baldwin County Board of Education's general administrative services is bloated. That's not the case at all. I'd be glad to discuss that with you in detail. Our expenditure for administrative services in Baldwin County is well below the state average. Okay? Now then, the next thing, what we have here, again, it's kind of tough to see. These are current general fund expenditures for the 5 Fairhope schools. So what we've done is broken our 5 schools out from all of Baldwin County, and these show the current general fund expenditures year by year for the Fairhope schools. And what we've done there, we show the amount of revenue. The ADM is average daily membership. That's the number of students. And finally, over on the right-hand side there, we see what the per pupil expenditure is. I'm going to use Jim's machine here.